Right, well, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this afternoon's meeting of the Cabinet on the 19th of April. And I hope you've all had a lovely bank holiday weekend. It was certainly nice to have a short break away from the usual attributes of what we get up to every week. So anyway, moving forwards with register of attendance and apologies for absence, I'll go to you, Graham. Thank you.
Thank you, Leader. So we've had apologies for absence today from Councillor Barry Dobson. All of the members of Cabinet are present as expected. We also have Councillors Baxter, Moran and Dilks who are here as observers.
Super, thank you very much. Therefore, moving on to agenda item number 2, which is minutes of the previous meeting held on the 29th of March 2022. And we'll go through them on a page-by-page basis. So page 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. Do I have a proposer for those minutes, please? Councillor Trollope-Bellew and seconder, Councillor Wood. Thank you. And all those in favour of the minutes, please indicate. And that is unanimous. Thank you very much. Therefore, moving on to agenda item number 3, which is disclosure of interests. Of course, if you do have anything that you wish to disclose throughout the meeting, then please feel free to do so. Otherwise, the standing items on your declaration forms obviously apply for this meeting as well. Therefore, moving on to items for Cabinet decision, which are key. And the first agenda item we have is item number 4, which is the final scope for the refurbishment of the Deepings Leisure Centre. In the absence of Councillor Dobson, I will present this report. So obviously the report provides an update in relation to the community consultation undertaken by the Council on the refurbishment proposals for the Deepings Leisure Centre, of which there was a significant response from the community. And I think it's fair to say that the Council has listened to the results of the consultation and obviously read those comments both online and on social media. And further options have been identified and costed since the extraordinary Council meeting in December to ensure that the facility meets the needs of the local community. And this is certainly a facility for the south of the district, not just for the Deepings, providing swimming and superb gym facilities. I am pleased to see the recommendation from our scrutiny committee today that the Cabinet should proceed with option D, which includes the retention of the learner pool. I think it's fair to say there was a lengthy discussion and debate at the scrutiny committee, and I must thank the chairman, Councillor Judy Stevens, for her work at that committee meeting. Of course, there remains work to be done to ensure that the Council can progress with the scheme of refurbishment, namely that an agreement for lease should be entered into, and that agreement should be reached with the Anthem Trust on the terms of a service level agreement, which will detail the terms of their use of the centre and a fair share of the contribution to the future repairs and maintenance of the facility. As we all know, the leisure centre remains closed and continues to deteriorate. It is imperative, though, that the Council has a sound basis to move forward on with an approved scheme of refurbishment. Without this, no work can commence to procure the necessary design team and construction contractor that are required to take the project forwards. I would like to thank obviously Karen Whitfield and her team to bring this forward to us today, and thank you for all the work that you've put into this. I know it's been a tremendous amount of work, and I'd like to pay tribute to your team. So obviously the recommendations are in the report are that Cabinet approves option D as the final scheme of refurbishment, with the provision that the refurbishment works will only commence upon finalisation of the service level agreement between South Kesteven District Council and the Anthem Trust, provides delegated authority to the Chief Executive in consultation with the Section 151 officer and Cabinet member for leisure to enter a contractual relationship with the preferred design team following a compliant procurement process, and 3, agrees to receive a further report within 6 months once the procurement process has been completed in order to award the refurbishment works to the preferred construction contractor. And that is my introduction to the item. So I'll open to Cabinet members initially for any comments or discussions. I know many of us are at the OSC. Councillor Trollope-Bellew first.
Thank you. As you said, this was well discussed at the Culture, Overview and Scrutiny Committee the other month, and I think we must, as you say, thank Karen Whitfield for all that she's done, because it's not been an easy task. There's been an awful lot of work to get where we have to this point, and I'm sure there's going to be an awful lot more till we actually manage to open it. I think also thanks to the independent company that did the consultation. We have listened, as you said, to what has come forward from residents from the south of the district, and until we get the lease agreement signed, there is not going to be a great deal we can do, but at least then we'll have everything, all our ducks in a row and ready to go when we can. And I think I would quite happily propose that recommendations 1, 2 and 3 are approved at the Cabinet meeting. Thank you.
Laurie, thank you for that. Councillor Reid and then Councillor Whittington.
Thank you very much, Leader. Well, I'd like to endorse what my fellow Cabinet member, Rosemary Topley, says, and in fact remind members of some of the consultation, and indeed some of that actually took place at the Mayor's in full council meetings, where there was a report of activity where learners are concerned and the facilities that they need. And indeed, I've not forgotten the dialogue that took place then. So I'm really pleased that that's been taken on board. It's been worked through, and that this project hopefully is the final one that will deliver. In saying that, the word delivery, Leader, does concern me a little bit, in that the recommendation 3 is that a further report within 6 months. Well, that would be October, once procurement process has been completed, so, or sooner. Now, I think we'd all like to see that the delivery of this, without mistakes of rushing anything, but I would like to see that we get on with it as soon as possible. So I don't know whether any wording or adjustments or assurances can be given that the sorrowful state of a closed facility at the moment, I think we'll all feel better if we actually see something happening there and we're actually getting on with it. So I don't know if there's any way that you can describe to us that happening possibly quicker than the route of the 6 months and procurement has to happen, understand?
Well, obviously, there's a procurement process to go through, and obviously we'll be working as fast as we can in order to get that facility reopened. And obviously, due to the level of spend, we've got to watch taxpayers' money and manage that process. But I have every confidence in the team that we will get that within 6 months and then start work as soon as possible. Councillor Whittington.
Yes, thanks very much indeed, Leader. Yeah, I think obviously I think we've reached a stage now where we've been discussing potentially how much we think this new leisure centre, this refurbishment, is going to cost. And I know we've got sort of a figure around about £10.5 million, but I think we have reached a stage now where we do need to go out to procurement. We do need to get some definitive costs assigned to all of this, because obviously since these figures were first pulled together some time ago, there has been quite a bit of inflation, pressure out there in sort of construction costs and building materials and that sort of thing. So I think that we sort of do need to go out and actually get these costs firmed up considerably more. I realise that I won't go into too much detail of what's in the pink papers for obvious reasons, but there's roughly a couple of £1 million there that's roughly around contingency and inflation that's already built in. So I'll be hoping that by the time we get the detailed costings, that that will be sufficient, because obviously it's got to be a little bit of a concern, the recent inflationary pressures, in the building sector. And I think the point you make, because all this is contingent upon getting that service level agreement in place, which is absolutely fundamental, because there's actually no way we can commit to spending any SKDC money until that legal agreement is in place, because I think that's pretty fundamental. And actually, I think if maybe once we go out to procurement, it would be perhaps informative to get some kind of timetable back from that process that will indicate potentially when going forward we do have a sort of a final cost of what all this is going to cost. Hopefully, to make sure, as I say, there is sufficient contingency in the numbers. But apart from that, really happy to support these recommendations. Thanks.
No, thank you, Councillor Whittington. I think there is, you know, the process that we're going through at the present time with the Department for Education in order to get that lease is certainly being expedited by our officers, and I know they've got a number of routes in order to expedite it, particularly within the DFE, and we'll certainly be using those in order to get that delivered. And I think the points you raised about inflation are absolutely right. You know, if you look at the inflation levels in construction materials and building and manufacturing, it is increasing at an alarming rate. So obviously we're working closely with our cost consultants and in terms with the experts in the field to make sure that we do get best value for money out of this scheme as well. Are any other cabinet members wishing to speak before I open the floor? No. Then Councillor Dilks, I'll hand over to you first.
You're very kind. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. First, as local one of the local members for Deeping St James, may I welcome the recommendation that you have before you today, following the consultation of the so-called meaningful consultation. However, the council's consultation was anything but meaningful, just as the so-called consideration by the scrutiny committee was anything but scrutiny, and in my view, brought the council into serious disrepute. I believe the council owes a debt of gratitude to Deeping's businessman Andy Pelling and others for organising the only meaningful consultation at no cost to the council, which actually asked the meaningful questions that the council's £10,000 consultation failed to address. Those cabinet members who were at the sham scrutiny committee will be aware of the disgraceful stunt pulled by the committee chairman to try to bar Mr. Pelling from presenting his legitimate findings to the committee. Now, I know the committee chairman...
Councillor Dilks, I'm just going to pause your 5 minutes there. Can we just be careful with language? Because, you know, there is a process that we follow at this council. We have a constitution, and if we don't like what's in the constitution, then we need to change it. Yes. Councillor Stevens was well within her right throughout that meeting. She was within her right at that meeting, as advised by the Democratic Services. And Mr. Pelling did not request to speak prior to that meeting, as it is set out in our constitution. Now, if you don't like the constitution, you have to vote to change it. But that's the way we should be working as an organisation.
Thank you for your comments. I'm glad you stopped the clock. I didn't realise I was restricted to time, but there we are. I'm sure it's in the constitution.
It is in the constitution.
Yes.
5 minutes, Councillor Dilks. We can happily provide you with a copy if you'd like to take one with you.
No, thank you. That's fine. We can start the clock again. The point was that when the chairman stopped Mr. Pelling from speaking, no one, you didn't challenge it. Obviously, you thought that's what's in the constitution. You may be right. I don't know. But however, it was Councillor Baxter who eventually challenged it and challenged that ruling. And as I understood it, the deputy monitoring officer advised the council chairman, that the chairman of that committee, that she was wrong. Can I be? I'd like a sort of ruling on that. Am I right on that? Because it's a fundamental point. If I'm wrong, I take what you're saying, Mr. Chairman. But from that meeting, I understood the deputy monitoring officer advised the chairman that she was wrong and that he did not have to pre-register.
And this isn't a Q&A.
Sorry?
This isn't a Q&A session. You are invited to make statements at this meeting. That is what is in the constitution. And I am a firm believer that we should be following it in all guises. So if you have issues with that,
perhaps you'd like to give me a ruling, Mr. Chairman, on whether or not I'm allowed to ask questions.
Councillor Dilks, I am speaking as chairman.
Yes.
If there is an issue with that meeting, then you should raise it at that meeting. This meeting of cabinet is to discuss the report before us. Now, this is an incredibly positive report, spending £10.5 million worth of taxpayers' money in the Deepings, and that positivity is what we should be talking about today. Not whether or not some other committee meeting that I am not chairman of was run correctly or not. If you've got issues with that, you raise that with the chief executive and the monitoring officer.
Mr. Chairman, you just advised me to raise it at the meeting. I was not allowed to raise it at the meeting. I was, restricted, as other Deepings independent members were restricted from speaking, as was an attempt to stitch up the alternative
Sorry, I'm
consultation
sorry, Councillor Dilks, I'm disagreeing with this. We are following, I always get it, I get told that we don't follow the constitution in this organisation. And when we do start following the constitution, you don't like it. So either we follow the constitution or we change it and we vote differently on it. But at the minute, we are following the constitution. You are, as members of not cabinet, you are allowed to speak for 5 minutes in terms of a statement. That is what we're allowing you to do. And you have 2 minutes left for your statement.
Yes, thank you. But before you start the clock again, can I please get that ruling? Was the chairman advised that she was wrong or
Councillor Dilks,
not?
this is not a Q&A. If you have points, I've already raised it. You raised it with the chief executive and the monitoring officer. This is not applicable to this meeting of cabinet.
Okay.
I hope that you'd be coming here today to speak positively about the plans to spend £10.5 million in the Deepings.
Mr. Chairman, we passed, this council actually passed, as I understand it, and you know, I welcome that what were the consultants recommended for a raised floor. Councillor Dobson actually said at that meeting, at the scrutiny meeting, that we agreed to have a meaningful consultation, including the learner pool. The learner pool question was never asked. I'm making the point that it was a hopeless consultation, and quite frankly, had the alternative consultation not been done, I'm convinced that that it would have been, the findings would have been rejected, and the 23, I think it was, % of people who in the free text box said that they'd like to keep the learner pool, it could have easily been looked at and said, ah, yes, but 77% actually want it. All I'm saying is, I think the alternative consultation played a significant part. It was discussed, and there were issues in it that were raised at that meeting that were not scrutinised. What I'm saying is, it wasn't a proper scrutiny, with respect. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Your comments are noted. Councillor Baxter.
Thank you. Are you chair or chairman?
Chairman's fine, Councillor Baxter.
Chairman. Okay. Thank you, Chairman. This is a point of order, first of all. You've just spoken to Councillor Dilks and said that this is not a Q&A session. I refer you to paragraph 8.5.7 of the Constitution, which says, and I quote, "Any member of the council may attend any open meeting of the cabinet. That member may speak and ask the relevant cabinet member questions on any item on the agenda of the meeting."
Councillor Baxter, Councillor Dilks is asking me questions about a previous meeting. That is not this meeting, and it is not on this agenda.
I would dispute your interpretation, but it is on the agenda. He's asking questions about the process by which this report has got to this meeting. And I think that to deny people like Councillor Dilks the opportunity to ask questions at this cabinet meeting is just to repeat the mistakes that Councillor Dilks has just outlined.
I'm sorry, Councillor Baxter, we have a constitution. We need to start following it as an organisation, because we get more confused when we don't follow it. Councillor Dilks could have asked me a number of questions on this report in this agenda, not a committee meeting. That is not cabinet. Councillor Baxter.
We'll agree to disagree with that, Chairman. If I might have my clock started when I find my notes. Here. So this is me addressing the report, and if I may, asking questions of the relevant cabinet member, which I guess is you today. I'd like to say, first of all, yes, we do welcome the £10 million investment. Certainly better than knocking the place down. Not quite as good as the new leisure centre that we were promised, but we do welcome the investment in our leisure centre. I do want to say, for the record, thanks to Karen Whitfield and her officer colleagues for what they've been through over the last year or 2 years, which has been extremely difficult. Karen, if I'm allowed to refer to officers by name, has been in a very difficult situation, and she's done very well to get us here with the aid of others. I'd like to also to thank the people of the Deepings who, through experience, know that in order to be heard in Grantham, they have to speak clearly and loudly, which they have done, not only through the meaningless consultation presented by Athene, but also by the meaningful consultation put together by Andy Pelling and others. I've got two concerns though, Chairman, and they are the procurement and the lease. Starting with the lease, you've mentioned about the expedition or the expediting of the lease. I'd like to ask what progress has been made since the last relevant meeting towards a lease, and what you mentioned the Department for Education. I know they are involved in the process. Not quite sure why they're involved just yet, when as far as I know, neither the county nor the district nor the parish nor the rugby club nor the school itself have actually put any pen to paper. If there's an update on that, then I would definitely welcome it, and so would everybody that's watching this with interest. The second question is about the procurement process. The procurement process, personally, I'm disappointed with the architects and the cost consultants who we have consulted with so far. I might say without an ordinary procurement process to recruit those people. They certainly were paid over the usual limit, but I realise that there are exceptions to that time. Anyway, those professionals recommended a pool which wouldn't have even been suitable for adult swimming lessons, nor for life-saving practice. A 1.5 metre pool would have been not adequate and certainly not a decent replacement for what has happened before. But there are also several other outstanding issues, which hopefully will be addressed during the procurement. First of all, the opening date. Will the removal of the requirement for a movable floor mean that we can get on with fixing the roof, which is all we wanted to do in the first place, fixing the roof and doing the pool works and getting the pool open before the other works? Or is the procurement going to tie us to opening everything at the same time? Secondly, are we going to take note of the other things that people said during the consultation process, such as what we need in terms of cafe area and refreshments, what we said about what the community said in terms of performance space, in terms of a sports hall which is usable for other events beside sport, as the old one was used various times in the past, and something that is particularly topical and will be close to my heart, the environmental issues around the centre, including solar thermal and solar PV. I know that some high-profile politicians lately have criticised agricultural land being used for solar PV and have said that we should first use existing buildings to put solar thermal and solar energy before we start using agricultural land. So can I plead that the procurement process makes sure that we use every kilowatt hour of energy available from the sun before we invest in boilers that are oversized or whatever. The boiler has been the big issue for the last 40 years. Energy costs are going to be a bigger issue over the next 25 years. So can we please make sure that from an environmental perspective, we get this absolutely right? And if you want to call it virtue signalling, then call it that. But we make sure we get absolutely the right mix of renewable and sustainable energy systems from day one. So if there are questions, Chairman, I would welcome your comments on the lease and also on the procurement process. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Baxter, for those. And I mean, just the first point that you raised in terms of the environmental aspects of that building, I think probably for the first time in quite a while, I don't disagree with you on that. I think we need to be taking as many steps as possible in terms of what we can do to make it as less carbon intensive as possible. And that goes across all of the assets that we have as an organisation, because I think we all know, the costs. And of course, yes, I have come out against the Mallard Pass solar farm, and I know that's a different discussion than today, but I'm sure we'll have that at some point at the council meeting. In terms of the lease and a couple of the other aspects, I'm happy for Karen Whitfield to answer a couple of points, then I'm happy to come back in.
Thank you, Leader. Yes, I'm happy to provide an update. So terms of heads of terms have been agreed between the Anthem Trust and the council with regards to an agreement for lease. The final piece of the jigsaw puzzle is a service level agreement which will detail the hours of use and the parts of the building that the school will be able to use, and also an appropriate contribution towards future repairs and maintenance of that building. Negotiations are carrying on in that regard, because obviously from my perspective, I have to look after this council's interest going forward and make sure that that cost or that proportional element is appropriate. So there will be an update, I would imagine, in the next couple of weeks in that regard.
In terms of procurement and the opening of the building, I mean, obviously, when we start the process, I think we'd all like to see it open up as soon as possible. I do think it's slightly disingenuous just to say just replace the roof, because you know that the structural issues are much more than just a roof just to go back on that building. But I think there's certainly a way in which, as we go through the process, we can then get into a phased approach of reopening that building. Because I think for all of us, as soon as we can open an aspect of that building, I think we want to see that open so the community can start to use that again. Karen, I don't know if you want to just comment on some of the procurement side of things.
Yes, in terms of the wider procurement process, we'll be following an open procurement process for the design team. We're hoping to begin that work after calling has expired from this meeting, if a decision is made. So we're ready to go with procurement documents in that regard. I think in terms of the final opening date, we can explore options for a phased opening. In all probability, that is likely to increase the costs. So as the project progresses, we'll have to make a balanced decision and look at the benefit against the cost, because obviously budget is key as is coming in on time. And I think, you know, if an element has to be reduced within the scheme to get us open quicker, that's a decision members could make at the appropriate time.
I think just on budget, you know, I think we've got to be aware, and you know, and I know the three of you will probably get fed up with me saying this, but you know, the market has changed in terms of leisure, in terms of investment, in terms of private sector investing into that market. You know, it has certainly not picked up massively or returned to where it was since pre-COVID. You know, neighbouring council areas have stopped funding. Neighbouring council areas have stopped the new build of their leisure facilities because of the financial pressures that local government finds itself in. So I think for us to be investing this money, and quite rightly, you know, I'm looking forward to a super facility being reopened again in the near future. And obviously, as soon as we can get that done, the better. Okay, do I have any further comments from cabinet members? No. Councillor Trollope-Bellew has agreed to propose. Therefore, could I have a seconder, please? Councillor Stokes, thank you very much. And could I take all those in favour, please? And that is unanimous. Thank you very much. Therefore, moving on to the items for information. So in terms of key and non-key decisions taken under delegated powers, there were none within this period. Therefore, moving on to agenda item number 6, which is the Cabinet's forward plan from pages 139 to 144. Do we have any comments or alterations on those? No, they are just for.
Chairman.
Oh, sorry,
Sorry.
Madam Chief Executive.
Thank you, Chairman. I think it's just to note that the date's different now since the publish of this for the Cabinet meeting in May. It's been changed to the 31st of May. So just to keep everybody aware.
Thank you very much. Get that updated. Okay, well, that is just for noting. So with that, as we've only got one agenda item on today, I'd like to thank you all for attending, and obviously we'll see you all soon, and have a good rest of the week, everyone. Thank you.